What happens to a person who sees too much? Imagine standing on the edge of a dark forest just before dawn. The air is heavy with mist, the trees whisper with invisible movement, and somewhere beyond the veil of fog lies a truth you can sense, but cannot name. Most people would turn back, grateful for the safety of ignorance. But a few, driven by an unexplainable pull, step forward. They are the ones who see what others cannot. And in that act of seeing, they cross a threshold that forever divides them from the rest of humanity. Carl Jung warned that such vision comes with danger. He believed that when a person peers too deeply into the unconscious, into the hidden architecture of the human soul, they risk not enlightenment but disintegration. The danger is not simply madness in the clinical sense, but a deeper psychic unraveling. The collapse of the fragile structures that allow a person to live in the ordinary world. We like to romanticize the visionary, the mystic, the prophet. History paints them in heroic tones, those who see beyond and lead others to wisdom. Yet Jung's insight was colder, more tragic. To see what others can't is not only to awaken, it is to lose the comfort of collective illusion. The visionary becomes an exile, stranded between two realities, the symbolic world of myth and the banal surface of social life. When Jung spoke of the unconscious, he didn't mean just the personal shadow, the sum of our repressed fears and desires, but the collective unconscious, a deep psychic reservoir shared by all of humanity. It is the world of archetypes, the mother, the hero, the trickster, the shadow living forces that shape our thoughts, our dreams, our myths. To touch this realm is to encounter something ancient and alive. But if one ventures too far without preparation, the experience can consume them. In his clinical work, Jung observed patients who had opened psychic doors they could not close. They saw visions, heard voices, or became obsessed with symbols and synchronicities that no one else could perceive. Some emerged transformed, wiser, and more integrated. Others shattered under the weight of what they encountered. Jung realized that seeing too much, piercing the veil of the unconscious, can be both revelation and ruin. He once described this condition as being possessed by an archetype. The mind becomes overrun by mythic energies too vast for a single consciousness to contain. The modern individual, cut off from ritual and mythic understanding, has no framework to integrate such forces. We mistake them for madness when perhaps they are something even more mysterious, the eruption of timeless patterns into personal life. To see what others cannot, therefore, is to stand at the intersection between psyche and cosmos, between dream and daylight. It is to feel the pulse of something larger than oneself moving through one's own mind. And that experience, while profound, can annihilate identity. Consider the paradox. Society praises innovation, insight, and originality, yet fears those who perceive reality differently. The visionary is celebrated only after they are dead, once their unsettling truths have been tamed by time. In life, they are often ridiculed, isolated, or declared insane. As Nietzsche observed, and those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. That single sentence captures Jung's warning. The danger of seeing what others can't is not merely the loneliness of difference. It is the confrontation with realities that the collective mind refuses to acknowledge. Most people do not want to see deeply, because to see deeply means to question everything: morality, progress, even the self. And so, the visionary becomes a mirror that others cannot bear to look into. But why do some of us feel compelled to see anyway? Why does the mind push beyond the safe boundaries of perception, chasing what lies beneath appearances? Is it curiosity, or an ancient instinct pulling us toward something necessary, even if destructive? In the next section, we'll step further into this psychic forest, to explore why the human soul is drawn toward forbidden knowledge, and how Jung believed the unconscious calls to us with both promise and peril. There is a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when curiosity turns into compulsion. What begins as a flicker of interest becomes an irresistible pull, a gravity drawing the mind toward depths it cannot fully understand. Jung believed this pull was not random. It was the voice of the unconscious, whispering to the conscious mind, "Come find what you've lost." Every human being, he argued, carries within them a hidden landscape, a forgotten inheritance buried beneath reason and habit. Most of us live on the surface of that landscape, moving from task to task, identity to identity, convinced we are whole. But beneath this fragile continuity lies the abyss, the unintegrated self, the shadow, the memories and desires we've buried so deep that they have become almost mythological. Why would anyone want to descend into that darkness? Because the unconscious does not simply hide what is unwanted. It hides what is essential. Jung wrote that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The darkness, then, is not evil, it is potential. Within it are the lost fragments of the self, the unclaimed pieces of soul that must be recovered if one is to be truly alive. And yet, the descent is perilous. The ego, that delicate structure of order and identity, fears disintegration above all else. It wants control, predictability, safety. The unconscious offers none of these. To enter it is to risk being overwhelmed by images and instincts that do not belong solely to you. It is to realize that you are not one mind, but a multiplicity, a constellation of drives, symbols, and ancestral echoes. When the unconscious calls, it often does so through crisis. A breakdown, a haunting dream, a sudden obsession, or a deep dissatisfaction with life as it is. These are not random disturbances. They are signals from the abyss. Something in the psyche demands recognition, but the conscious mind resists. The greater the resistance, the more violent the eruption. Jung saw this again and again in his patients. Many who came to him were not merely sick, but split. They were caught between two worlds, the rational daylight world of society and the irrational symbolic world of the psyche. The more they tried to suppress the latter, the more it invaded the former, through anxiety, compulsions, even hallucinations. The psyche, Jung said, will not be denied. What is repressed must eventually return. The danger lies in mistaking that return for revelation without integration. When someone touches the unconscious too suddenly, through trauma, hallucinogenic experience, or even intellectual overreach, they may mistake psychic chaos for spiritual awakening. They believe they have seen the truth, but what they have seen is only a fragment, torn from its context. Without grounding, such glimpses can become delusions, obsessions, or mystical inflation, the ego believing itself divine. This is why Jung treated the process of individuation, the integration of the unconscious into consciousness, not as a heroic conquest but as a sacred balancing act. The goal was never to defeat or escape the darkness, but to converse with it, to allow its wisdom to reshape the self without annihilating it. The abyss, in this sense, is not the enemy. It is the teacher, but like all great teachers, it demands sacrifice. The sacrifice of certainty, the sacrifice of one's old self. And that is why so few answer the call. To truly see what others cannot, one must be willing to die to what one has been. In this way, the danger of seeing is inseparable from its necessity. The human spirit, it seems, is destined to oscillate between ignorance and illumination, sanity and revelation. The abyss is both wound and womb, the place where the old self dissolves and something new begins to take form. As Soren Kierkegaard once wrote, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom," and perhaps that is what Jung meant all along. The danger of seeing is not the fall itself, but the realization that there was never any ground beneath us. In the next section, we'll explore the other side of this descent, the social dimension of seeing. What happens when the visionary, having glimpsed the abyss, returns to a world that cannot comprehend what they've witnessed? To see what others cannot is one thing. To live among those who cannot see is another. The visionary's tragedy is not only in what they perceive, but in the unbearable distance that perception creates between themselves and the rest of the world. After glimpsing the abyss, the return to ordinary life feels like waking from a dream only to find the dream was more real than the waking world. Jung often spoke of this return as the most perilous stage of psychic transformation. It is not the vision that destroys a person, it is the failure of the collective to receive it. When an individual's inner experience diverges too sharply from the shared reality of their society, they risk becoming a stranger in their own home. Their words sound like riddles, their insights like madness. Society depends on consensus reality. It requires shared illusions to function, beliefs about morality, order, identity, and progress. The visionary disrupts these illusions, sometimes without meaning to. They become a mirror held up to the tribe's unconscious, reflecting its contradictions, hypocrisies, and fears. But few societies can bear that reflection. What cannot be integrated is usually expelled. Thus, the visionary is cast out, not because they are wrong, but because they have seen too deeply. History offers countless examples. Socrates condemned for corrupting the youth. Giordano Bruno burned for imagining an infinite universe. Van Gogh painting what the soul saw, not what the eyes could. Each of them paid the price for seeing. Their insight pierced the fabric of the collective illusion, and the collective responded with fear. Jung recognized this pattern not as historical accident, but as psychological necessity. The group protects its stability by sacrificing the one who threatens to awaken it. This exile can take many forms: social isolation, misunderstanding, mockery, or even self-imposed withdrawal. The visionary may retreat not from contempt, but from futility. How do you speak of color to those born blind? How do you describe the music of the unconscious to those who live only in reason? The deeper one's insight, the greater the solitude it brings. Yet Jung did not see the solitude as purely tragic. In it lies the seed of individuation, the process by which the soul becomes itself, no longer dependent on collective validation. The exile becomes a crucible. Stripped of belonging, the visionary must forge meaning from within. The very isolation that wounds them also frees them from conformity. They learn to dwell in tension, to love the world that rejects them, to serve it even while standing apart. But make no mistake, the burden is heavy. The visionary carries within them a vision that demands expression but defies language. Jung compared this condition to being possessed by a god, a force that insists on being known, even if it destroys its vessel. The danger is that the visionary, unable to bridge the gap between worlds, may lose balance entirely. They may become the mad prophet, shouting truths that sound like chaos, or the broken mystic, crushed under revelation's weight. The ancient Greeks understood this danger well. They spoke of mania, divine madness, as both curse and gift. To be touched by the gods was to see beyond human limits, but also to suffer their fire. Modern society, having lost its mythic language, calls such states psychosis or hallucination. Yet beneath the clinical labels remains the same archetypal drama: the soul's collision with something larger than itself, and the community's inability to comprehend it. Friedrich Hölderlin, the poet who wandered into madness after glimpsing transcendence, once wrote, "Where danger is, grows the saving power also." In that paradox lies Jung's insight. The very experience that isolates the visionary may also redeem them, if they can endure the passage long enough to bring their vision into form. But how does one endure? How does the mind, torn between revelation and rejection, find equilibrium again? Jung believed the answer lay not in resisting the tension but in transforming it, turning exile into initiation. In the next section, we will explore that alchemy, the integration of the vision, the slow and perilous work of bringing what was seen in darkness into the light of the human world, without losing one's sanity or soul. If the visionary's descent into the unconscious is a death, then integration is the resurrection. Yet it is not a simple return to what was before. Once the veil has been lifted, innocence cannot be recovered. Only transformation remains possible. Jung called this the alchemical process, a psychic transmutation through which chaos becomes meaning and suffering becomes consciousness. But unlike literal alchemy, this process doesn't involve gold or fire. It involves the soul's dialogue with itself. The task is to take what was seen in darkness and give it form in daylight, without diluting its truth or being destroyed by its intensity. Jung warned that this stage was far more difficult than the descent itself. To awaken is one thing, to live awakened among the sleeping is another. The danger of seeing what others cannot is that the vision may never find its container. The images, Revelations or intuitions that emerge from the unconscious are not meant to be worshipped blindly or suppressed. They must be translated into consciousness, shaped into art, philosophy, service, or new ways of being. Without such translation, they remain volatile, like raw psychic energy that corrodes the vessel holding it. Jung described this process as a sacred dialogue between opposites. The conscious and the unconscious, reason and instinct, light and shadow. He believed that the psyche seeks wholeness, not perfection. Integration, then, does not mean erasing the darkness, but learning to live in creative tension with it. The goal is not to become pure, but complete. The alchemists, whom Jung studied extensively, symbolized this transformation through stages. Nigredo, blackening, albedo, whitening, and rubedo, reddening. In modern terms, nigredo is the confrontation with chaos, the breakdown, the descent. Albedo is the illumination, when meaning begins to crystallize from suffering. And rubedo is the embodiment, the new life that emerges when the opposites are reconciled within the individual. To reach this final stage requires patience and humility. Many who glimpse higher truths fall into what Jung called inflation, the belief that their vision makes them special, chosen, or infallible. But the true mark of integration is not grandeur, it is groundedness. The wise do not boast of their insight. They serve it quietly, letting the vision express itself through their being. The artist who paints what no one else can see. The healer who touches wounds others avoid. The philosopher who wrestles chaos into language. Each, in their own way, becomes an alchemist, turning vision into value, isolation into wisdom. Through creative expression, the inner world begins to rejoin the outer. The invisible finds shape, and the once exiled soul finds belonging again. Not in the collective illusion, but in shared humanity. Yet integration demands more than creativity. It requires surrender. One must accept that the vision will never be fully understood, not by others and not even by oneself. To carry mystery without resolving it, to live in awareness of the unknown without collapsing into despair, that is the true work of the awakened. As the philosopher Heraclitus wrote, "The path up and down are one and the same. The descent into darkness and the ascent into light are not two journeys, but one continuous movement. Every return from the abyss carries traces of it. Every moment of illumination bears the shadow that made it possible." In this light, Jung's warning takes on new depth. The danger of seeing what others can't is not only madness or exile, it is the temptation to cling to the vision, to make an idol of it. The moment the visionary mistakes their insight for absolute truth, the transformation stops, and inflation begins. The vision, instead of liberating, enslaves. Integration, then, is not possession but partnership with the unconscious, with the mystery, with the living symbols that shape existence. It is an endless alchemy, a rhythm of descent and return. And yet, even for those who succeed in this integration, a quiet sorrow remains, the knowledge that most will never understand, and that true wholeness always carries the imprint of loss. In the next and final section, we'll confront that sorrow directly, exploring what it means to live with such vision, to carry Jung's warning not as despair, but as a profound invitation, to see deeply and still choose to love the world that refuses to see. To see what others cannot is to live with a double vision, one eye on eternity, the other on the fragile fabric of daily life. It is both gift and burden, a secret knowledge that isolates even as it illuminates. Those who have glimpsed beneath the surface of things know that the world is not as solid as it appears. Every moment flickers with hidden meaning, every gesture echoes with archetype, every silence hums with unseen life. After such sight, one cannot return to blindness without dying a little inside. And yet, Jung understood that sight without compassion becomes cruelty. The visionary who despises the blind becomes blind in a different way, blind to love, blind to humility, blind to the humanity that binds us all. The true task is not simply to see, but to bear what is seen with grace. This, Jung believed, was the final stage of individuation, the reconciliation of insight with life. The danger of vision is not only that it isolates, but that it tempts the seer to transcend humanity altogether, to live in abstraction, in philosophy, in detachment. But to stay human, to remain among the living while holding knowledge that could destroy illusions, that is the noblest struggle of all. The world, for its part, still needs illusion. Too much truth, too quickly revealed, burns like unfiltered light. Civilization itself depends on shared myths, stories that give coherence to chaos. The visionary's role, therefore, is not to obliterate illusion but to refine it, to renew it. Through art, myth, or compassion, the visionary translates the unseen into language the collective can bear. But even this service does not erase the loneliness. Those who see deeply often walk through life with quiet melancholy, a nostalgia for a truth they can never fully express. They have touched something vast and wordless, and every human exchange feels like an approximation. It is not arrogance, but grief that fills their solitude. Still, there is beauty in that grief. To live awake in a sleeping world is to participate in the universe's own dream, consciously, tenderly, knowing it is both real and illusion at once. The visionary learns to hold paradox not as torment, but as truth. That darkness births light, that knowledge demands mystery, that love endures even in a fractured world. Jung himself wrestled with this paradox all his life. His writings are not those of a detached scholar, but of a man haunted by visions, compelled to translate them before they consumed him. His warning about seeing what others can't was not a rejection of vision, but a call for balance, to anchor the transcendent in the human, to make the invisible livable. In one of his letters, Jung confessed that the experience of the self is always a defeat for the ego. To see beyond the ordinary self is to watch it die, and yet in that death lies liberation. The visionary is not meant to dominate the world with insight, but to be humbled by the immensity of what they've seen. Perhaps that is why those who truly integrate their vision rarely speak in thunder or prophecy. They speak softly, they work quietly, they radiate an understanding that needs no proclamation. They have passed through the fire and returned, not with dogma, but with depth, with eyes that see both the horror and the holiness of existence, and still choose to say yes. For the rest of us, Jung's warning endures not as deterrent but as invitation. To see deeply is dangerous, yes, but not to see is a subtler kind of death. Between blindness and madness lies a narrow path. Awareness tempered by compassion, vision balanced by humility. As the mystic and philosopher Simone Weil wrote, to be rooted is perhaps the most important and least recognized need of the human soul. Vision without roots is dissociation. Roots without vision are stagnation. Jung's wisdom lies in their marriage, in daring to look into the abyss while keeping one's feet on the earth. And so, the true danger of seeing what others can't is also its ultimate promise, that in facing the darkness we become its light.